This episode of Eat the Rules is brought to you by You on Fire. You on Fire is the online group coaching program that I run that gives you a step-by-step way of building up your self-worth beyond your appearance. With personalized coaching from me, incredible community support, and lifetime access to the program so that you can get free from body shame and live life on your own terms. Get details on what's included and sign up for the next cycle at summerinnanen.com/you on fire. I'd love to have you in that group. This is Eat the Rules, a podcast about body image, self-worth, anti-dieting, and intersectional feminism. I am your host, Summer Innanen, a professionally trained coach specializing in body image, self-worth, and confidence, and the best-selling author of Body Image Remix. If you're ready to break free of societal standards and stop living behind the number on your scale, then you have come to the right place. Welcome to the show. This is episode 210, and it's another segment of the movement series. I'm interviewing Alicia Ferguson and Paris Alexandra, owners of BK Yoga Club, which is the first Black women-owned body-positive yoga studio in the U.S. We talk about how yoga helped them cultivate a better relationship with their bodies, how it can be used to practice compassion and acceptance, why they saw a need for a body-positive yoga studio, and how they are doing things differently. You can find all the links and resources mentioned in this episode at summerinnanen.com/210. I want to give a shout out to 3 Makes Me Crazy who left this awesome review. Let's just say, at nearly 50, I'd imagined I would have had this all figured out by now. The never-ending pursuit of some ethereal perfection has consumed nearly my entire life. Constantly going down roads of harnessing motivation and getting therapy for my quote-unquote issues finally has me saying, stop. What Summer is doing for me is providing a place for all those rebel thoughts I've always had that tell me I'm not broken and maybe there's another way of thinking. Her varied guests give me food for thought and what I've really been hungering for. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. I think there is this misconception that as you get older, you just magically figure it out. And I think sometimes we do figure certain things out, but often we have to kind of have a wake up call moment where we say, there's got to be a better way. And I'm so glad you found that. And I'm so glad you found the podcast. And I really, really appreciate you leaving that review. If you haven't already done so, you can leave a review by going to iTunes, search for Eat the Rules, then click ratings and reviews and click to leave a review or give it a rating. And don't forget to grab the free 10-day body confidence makeover at summerinnanen.com/freebies with 10 steps to take right now to feel better in your body. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to the show as well. That would really, really be helpful to me. It helps others to find the show. It helps to keep it on the air. I am excited about this interview. I had an absolute pleasure interviewing Alicia and Paris. They're doing some really amazing stuff in New York, but the amazing thing is that you can take any of their classes online. So if you're looking for body positive yoga classes in a place that feels inclusive, definitely check out what they have to offer. I really loved what they said. I specifically loved how, and you'll hear them talk about this, how they don't look at body positivity through this binary of, if you either have to be 100% into it or not into it. They really are accepting and welcoming of anyone based on where they are in their journey. And they're just there to kind of support them and give them acceptance for wherever they are. And I really, really appreciate that about the approach that they take. Before we get started with this, I just want to apologize if maybe the audio isn't as good as it normally is. I was using this new platform and this was the first interview I did on it. And so it was a little bit of a learning curve, but hopefully it sounds pretty good at the end of the day. Okay, let's get started. BK Yoga Club is the first Black women-owned body positive yoga studio in the U.S. They are taking up space in the wellness industry by shifting dominant narratives in the wellness fitness space. They are your home away from home, where practitioners, artists, and creatives come together to share the gift of yoga, movement, and creativity. Co-founders Alicia Ferguson and Paris Alexandra connected over their shared vision to create a diverse, holistic wellness space that uplifts people from all backgrounds. Let's get started with the show. Hello, Alicia and Paris. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm so excited to have you on the show. Why don't you start out by telling everyone just a little bit about, what your relationship with your body was like growing up? Did you have anything that you struggled with that sort of led you to where you are today doing this work that you do now?
Yeah, so I would say for me, my relationship with my body growing up was very push and pull. And so a lot of the concepts of how you see yourself and how you even compare yourself is really based around your family unit, especially when you're younger. And so fortunately and unfortunately for me, I had both of those examples growing up. So as a child, I was definitely just rounder. And so my grandmother just grew up in a different time where seam line. She'd be like, baby girl, you're not seam line. And you're just like, what does that mean, grandma? But it just means you had a little pudge or you were not necessarily fitting in your clothes the way they thought that they should fit into them. And my mom was super supportive and very just affirming me and who I was. And so again, like I said, I got both dynamics. My grandma came from a different generation. Women presented themselves in a way, and most of the times, and they were supposed to be streamlined, was what made you. My mom kind of just reassured me in a different way that I didn't necessarily need to fit into that box. So I thought it was confusing at times because you're hearing one thing and then you're seeing another, and then you go to school and then comparing yourself to everyone else. But I'm just really thankful that my immediate household, my mom just reaffirmed me in a really good way. But like I say, when you get older and you start getting into school and that comparison thing happens, and then you start looking at pop culture and what's going on, what people are deeming as attractive or cool, you start turning that lens on yourself. And so no matter how much your parents kind of pour into you or your community pours into you, you still fall into that space of times where you're just I know that this is what I shouldn't be thinking, but I can't help but feeling this way or feeling these pressures. And that did kind of lead us into me specifically into my finding my own wellness journey into kind of BK Yoga Club and the mission of what we do now.
Yeah. And so Paris, did you want to share a little bit about your story there too?
Sure. Can you ask the question again?
Yeah. So what was your relationship with your body like when you were growing up? Was it, did you have any struggles that then sort of eventually led you to this mission that you're on now with BK Yoga?
Yeah. So I became aware of my body at a very young age. In my family, it was something that was always talked about. So culturally, the idea of thinness was very much talked about in my household and, within my family dynamic. All the women in my family are larger bodied women. So it was a continual conversation that I was very much aware of as young as 6. I was aware of my body. I've always been larger. So I've always been more aware of oh, I have hips, I have bigger breasts. And it was something that I was self-conscious about. It was a struggle because I was comparing myself to the dominant standards of beauty, which I didn't fit. And so I was constantly comparing myself, even though my body was slim, I was still comparing myself to whoever was popular at the time, maybe a Halle Berry or something. And as I, was kind of growing into myself, I started practicing yoga. And that's when yoga kind of introduced me to the mind-body connection. And I really started to kind of really cultivate self-acceptance. And it's an ongoing journey. It's a journey for me even to this day. Mm-hmm. I don't think I'm ever going to be in a place where I'm arrived and enlightened about my body and feeling 100%, because there's different seasons. And I think because of the society that we live in and how much women are examined and picked apart, it's part of our cultural conditioning. So I think it's an ongoing process of unlearning, relearning, and cultivating self-acceptance. And then lastly, I would say this whole idea of always needing to feel beautiful is not realistic. So where does that come from? I don't feel and I shouldn't have to, right? So that's a continual journey. And so that's kind of where I'm at. I think with BK Yoga Club, we came together where we, visibly two different body types. And I think that it's important for us to come together, especially as Black women of different body types, to be acknowledge each other's experiences, not as one is more important than the other or one is less, or you know what I mean? And then really share our experiences, but also the question is, how do we continue to go on this journey and this process together? And I feel a lot of times in the body positive community, we're very separate and divisive. And I understand that certain bodies are more marginalized in society, which I think is important to acknowledge. And what does it look like to really have these conversations collectively? Larger body folks, smaller body people come together, have these conversations.
Love it. And I think everything you said there is so aligned to what I talk about and what other guests have talked about on the show, just about really kind of divesting from this notion that you have to be beautiful and that's a requirement and that there's like a destination involved in self-acceptance, because it's not. It's definitely a practice. It's anything but a destination. So I know one of the things that was mentioned to me was that less than 10% of yoga studios are Black owned. And so what is the impact of having Black and brown folks underrepresented in traditional wellness spaces? From your perspective, what is the impact of that?
Again, it's really about visibility. So when we were talking about me not seeing myself and thinking that I needed to look like a particular size, right? Not seeing yourself represented, sometimes it's like you don't see that it's possible for you, right?
Yeah.
You see Black women of different skin tones, different hair textures. It's important to have that visibility and not just have it be one person, but to be a diverse representation of all types of Black and brown women. And I think that's what our vision is to really, through our work, allow folks to feel seen, heard, and represented.
Yeah. And so what inspired you to really start BK Yoga? Like, was that something that you had always wanted to do, or was it something that you really felt was like, this missing thing in the market, like that there just wasn't, a place that felt really inclusive to you?
I think it wasn't something that we were like, as kids, we're like, we want to start a yoga studio one day. That definitely wasn't the goal. I think me and Paris, I almost call it like this idea of like synchronicity that we kind of like met teacher training. So Paris she was the intern for that cohort, and that wasn't even supposed to be her cohort. Like, I think she got asked to do it a term early. And I signed up maybe like 3 days. I was still on the fence. I signed up 3 days before it actually started. I finally was like, just pull the trigger, like just go ahead and do this. And I was coming off of like a healing process. So my grandmother had passed away 6 months prior. Yes, after my grandma had passed away, I used it really for me as like healing journey. So I was back and forth with yoga for years, like just not consistent with the practice, but I definitely enjoyed it. It was the first time I had like this mind body awareness, and I was like working out my body, but not in an aggressive way. I was more so paying attention to my body, listening to the breath. It was the first time I was really conscious of the breath. So that's full circle. It brought me back to that. And so I used it as a way to really just get in tune with what I was actually feeling. Like, that's why I processed it. I wasn't big with like talking to everybody, but I worked it out on the mat. And so whatever I was feeling, I breathed it out, I cried it out, I moved it out. And at the end of that, I was like, you know what? I did this for 6 months straight and I don't hate it. And maybe I'll do a teacher training, because the benefits that I received, just like the mental well-being, and then even just seeing my body shift and transform in a different way, and that just how strong it became, was enough to make me want to be like, I want to be able to like bring this to my community. I want to be able to like do this for other people, what I've received. And what I would note too at that time, because I was going through so many mental transitions, I was actually thinking about getting a boob job at the time, so breast augmentation. And it came down to like, I was like, I can do that, or I a teacher training. What do I have enough money for? And I prayed on it, and I was like, you know what? I'll do this first. And then if I'm still feeling that way, then I'll go that journey afterwards. And I'm happy that I did it in this way. Not saying that I still wouldn't get breast augmentation done, but the reasoning why I would do it is so much different. Like, I have a new appreciation for my body. I got stronger than I could have ever even imagined. I had no upper body strength, and I'm like holding chaturangas, and just it more so amazed me at the strength that I was able to cultivate and how I was able to transform my body than wanting to like do it, alter it for reasons that necessarily weren't always healthy. And again, like I said, I would still consider it, but the reasons why now are different. Like, it's coming from a healthier perspective, a whole space for me.
Totally. That's really cool. And so with yoga, like, I think on this podcast before, we've talked about how whitewashed the wellness industry is. And I'm just curious to know, like, what your thoughts are on this as it relates to yoga. Like, when you were initially training or doing teacher training and seeing all the magazines, like, what were your sort of thoughts on that? And do you feel like that's evolving now?
Yeah. So I always love to give the example in our yoga teacher training, there was 25 students, and there were 3 women of color. and 2 of them are sitting right here. So that was just kind of like an example of what the larger wellness field looked like at that time. I think strides have definitely been made, but it's still not it's still not equal, essentially, right? And so I think what we do is bring representation to that. And so we're not necessarily out here being like in reaction to what other people are doing and being like, we're creating our own communities and we're centering us and what our needs are as Black and brown women at the center of what BK Yoga Club is doing. And so I think for us, it's really an opportunity for us to be more representative, to get to show people in a different light, to get to show people that looks different at every age, at every stage, at every ability, at every income. And like Paris was saying also too, even when we get into women of color, even colorism becomes a thing, which is more of a micro thing within the community. And being able to show the breadth of that, because sometimes when women of color and Black women specifically are represented, there's one type that people feel like is acceptable to be in the wellness field. There are so many different shades. There's so many different hair textures. There's so many different backgrounds. There's so many different colloquial languages that should still be accepted. I don't think there's one way to be within the wellness field when we think about women of color. And so I'm super excited and proud of the work that we're doing and how we keep peeling back the layers, because it's not just being representative as women of color and as Black women. Even within that now, we're getting to the nuances of it, of being like, okay, how can we do more? Right? Like, how can we be more diverse? How can we be more inclusive? How can we make sure that everyone feels like they have a space at the table that's being created here?
Yeah, I love that. That's so great. And such important work. And like overall, just in the kind of mainstream yoga, like what messages do you feel are really missing within mainstream yoga?
I think everything that Alicia just said, I feel like the diverse representation piece is so important. It's more than putting a Black or brown person on your website. It's really about how are you moving within your company? Are the people in your organization, the people that you're working with, that you serve, are they being seen? Do they feel heard? Do they feel represented? Do they feel like their voices matter? And are they empowered to create their own communities? Right. So I think that that's an important thing that's missing. It's not just about having a Black or brown person or queer or trans person on the staff. It's really about what is the, intention of the work, the impact of the work, and then how are we as in us and the larger community creating and co-creating spaces for people to be empowered to create their own spaces and be empowered to represent themselves and live who they are to their fullest expressions.
Yeah, amazing. I think that's such an important point that you brought up there. I'm curious to know, just for your own studio, like how are you kind of doing it differently in terms of making it more body positive and sort of, removing the influence of diet culture? Because I think that has sort of permeated into yoga culture. So I would just be curious to know like how you're doing things differently where you are.
Yeah, so I've been in the yoga space for over 15 years. And so I did another yoga teacher training maybe 15 years ago, and it was very much rooted in diet culture. And so when we co-created BK Yoga Club, it was very important to really have self-determination be at the center, because again, a lot within these communities, it could be opposite extremes, right? So we're not nutritionists, right? So that's an important distinction, I think, because within the wellness space, people can take the lead as like the nutritionist or the dietitian. And it's like, hey, there's so many different ways of thinking about things. So again, it's really important for us to facilitate a space of self-determination. So if you feel so inclined to eat an apple and that's what you feel makes you feel strong and healthy, and then, hey, more power to you. If you're in a space where you want to lose weight, then more power to you. If you're in a space where where you are and you're practicing self-acceptance, again, we are here to meet you where you're at and not to make those decisions for you. And I think that's a really important thing about just creating a space that feels body positive.
Yeah. So really like sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I was just going to say, I love what Paris said about the idea of there's the two extremes within the wellness field, and people just having an understanding for us, like that's not our work, right? So we aren't We're not dietitians. We're not nutritionists. And so we don't even want to come off as that and prescribing things for people, where it's like this idea of like everyone's individual journey and what you need for your body is going to be different than what I need and what's going to work for my body. So we're here from a space of we are allowing you to make those choices. Maybe here's different tools that you could use and you should see what works and what fits for you. But removing the judgment, the shame, or the guilt for either wanting to diet or not wanting to diet. Because I feel like either one that you choose, like depending on which spectrum you're in or what space you're in, you can get some backlash for that. And so we don't want to be a space that's even centered around that, or it's even making that necessarily like a huge topic of conversation. Yeah. It's really about, how do I feel in my body? How am I growing physically stronger? How am I growing mentally stronger? How am I spiritually becoming more aligned with the things that I'm saying that I want? And how are my actions becoming aligned with it? And so for us, that's what we're centering and making the focus.
Yeah. And we have various folks on our team that specifically work with inclusivity. We have therapists on our team that we can refer folks to if they are experiencing some challenges around that. That's just not our job. So we just want to be really clear about, again, self-determination, and then also providing, like what Alicia said, those resources for folks who might be having challenges in that area.
Yeah, I love that. I think that, sometimes things can come off really binary. It's like, kind of looking at things through like a good or bad lens. And I feel that there's just so much nuance to stuff, and everyone's in a different place in their own journey, and, really promoting body autonomy and like you said, self-determination. I love, that was the word you used, right? Self-determination. I love that. I think that that's such a good way of phrasing it and promoting that kind of atmosphere as one of the values of your work.
Yeah. And I think, honestly, when you think about it, we're not examining every move that a man chooses to do with his body. If he's, and I think for us, because of the society we live in, women are continually examined. And then there is this prescription of how we are supposed to be. And this is wellness right now. And it's like, hey, everybody's journey is different. Yeah. Everybody's experience is different. Some people have a history of diabetes, or, you know what I mean? So there's nuance.
Specifically in the African American community, diabetes and
so
heart
it's like,
disease.
How do we get support to navigate those things, but also with a mind frame that's not fully centered on just like the negative effects of the diet industry, right? And, diet, what do we say? Diet? Culture.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. So I'd love to know, just from body image perspective, like how do you see the practices or the philosophies of yoga like facilitating a better relationship with one's body?
But I honestly think it's that piece of being silent with yourself, being connected to your breath, noticing and observing what's happening in your body, and being with it all, right? I feel like for me personally, that gives me permission to be like, to really, really take a moment and be like, listen, I'm alive. My body is supporting me right now in these various ways. And when I notice my body's not the same it was 10 years ago, I can't do the same postures. Being with where I am in the present moment, it gives me so much gratitude. And I think that the practice of yoga allows me to remind myself that when I'm kind of feeling like icky on some days,
Yeah, good. And so, Alicia, were you going to say something about that too?
Sorry, if you could just rephrase the question one more time.
Oh, sure. So just from your perspective, what practices or philosophies within yoga do you think are helpful towards helping someone heal their relationship with their body?
Yeah. So again, similar to what I was saying earlier, when my grandma passed away, like I use yoga as modality, essentially. There's different tools that I could have used, and yoga was that thing that I chose to, again, come back in alignment with my thoughts, come back into alignment with my body to notice how I was feeling. So there's all these little micro traumas that have been happening, and I was storing them all in my body. And so in my practice, I was able to explore those. I was able to have some more discovery and to acknowledge them, right? Instead of just kind of like suppressing things, it came out on the mat. And so I think there's this idea of yoga, like Paris was saying, allows you to be quiet. It allows you to be silent, and allows like your inner knowing is what I love to say, whether it's God, your creator, whatever you want to say, your inner knowing, it allows it to really speak when you give those quiet moments, and allows it to kind of tell you what the things that you might not be consciously like aware of or consciously thinking. And so there's so many times where I'm on the mat and like a thought will come up and it's just like, oh, that was the answer. I didn't even know that that's what I was looking for, but like that is the answer. When I know when I'm avoiding my yoga practice, something's going on. I know that now. I know my relation to the mat. And so I'm clearly avoiding either thinking about it. I'm clearly avoiding dealing with whatever's happening in my body. And so for me, again, yoga is just been that idea of really connecting my actions to what I'm saying that I'm trying to actually create. It's like bringing it into full alignment. And then also just the spiritual practice as well of just being grounded. Like that's my center.
Yeah. I'm not really into yoga, so I love hearing you talk about it because I'm like, I think so many people have this perception that like yoga is exercise, like it's like a workout or like exercise. And I think, just hearing you talk about it, it's like, that's not what you're mentioning at all. Like you're mentioning this very, like emotional, spiritual experience that really helps you move through stuff and connect with your body. And I just think that like, for me, even just hearing you speak, I'm like, whoa, like it's just framed up so differently than the way I think that it's kind of interpreted in mainstream culture.
And I think that's one of the key parts that I got to experience in my yoga journey. And then moving into like a teacher training, it was awesome because I got to see more of the asana piece of it too, and like have that understanding and bridging both of those together. So like how emotionally it helped me heal, how spiritually it brought me closer to, and then now physically how I'm able to just like see my body become stronger it's ever been and just see it develop in a new way. And I think those are some of the core principles of what BK Yoga Club was founded off of. And so again, it's like anytime you're going to do any type of physical activity, your body will transform. You could walk, you could run, you could lift, like whatever it is, your body's going to transform. Yeah, no, it definitely does. But for us, it's like yoga is so much more than just that physical transformation that happens. And again, it's like when you hear the word yoga, yoga means union. Right? That's like what it all means. And so it's bringing it all together. It's like physically, mentally, spiritually. How do I bring everything into alignment?
Yeah, that's great. That's so wonderful to hear. You mentioned something else just about like when you feel resistance to going on the mat, you sort of know that you're avoiding something. So yeah. I think that that's like a common theme for a lot of people, whether it's kind of resisting whatever it may be. Like, how do you personally overcome that resistance or allow yourself to sort of just go there knowing that it might be difficult?
Yeah. And I think it's almost fun. Want to be transparent and say that because I think as yoga teachers and studio owners, it's like we do yoga every single day. And it's like, no. I'm just like everyone else. Like there is this idea of like maintaining your personal practice and continue to growing and evolve. And so for me, when I'm resistant, I can go a week for sure. What I'll try to do, like go 2 weeks maybe. But what I try to do is if it's not the physical movement of yoga, there's other things that I consider in my like wellness rituals. So in the morning times, I'm either going to journal or I'm going to meditate. And those help me bring up things where I'm like, oh, there's something here mentally that I'm challenged with or that's blocking me. And sometimes the meditation will do it. And maybe the journaling exercise will bring up what I need to do and take action on. But there's a lot of things that just, like I said, the body holds. The body's beautiful in that it's like, oh my gosh, you're going through something. Let me protect you and like store it here. But if we never release it, like I'm just constantly putting this pressure and this stress on my body. And I'm doing myself a disservice. So although I could be meditating, praying, and journaling, there's things that I physically need to like work out eventually. And so, like I said, because I think I have these other tools that are in my wellness ritual, it eventually always brings me back to the mat, no matter how long I dip and dodge it.
Yeah. So what is your advice to someone who like maybe, really wants to start a yoga practice, but is not really sure where to go, what to do, how to find a place that makes them feel good? Like, how would you sort of advise someone to go from that place?
BK Yoga Club.
Just start.
Like, we can travel. Oh yeah, for sure. Well, actually, first tell you're located in New York, right? Where are you in New York?
So we're located in Brooklyn, specifically Bed-Stuy. But what's really great about us is we're also global, and we will continue to grow global virtually.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, that's
I
huge.
would say that this is something that Alicia and I and our team, we've been working on, doing research on, is how do we take folks on a journey? And starting exactly where you're at as you are, baby steps, the small steps,
building those habits,
right? So we have a program that we're launching that's really focused on meeting folks where they are. It's called Yoga Journeys. And so really even 10 minutes a day to really continually meet yourself where you're at and continually grow. And so we have a 7-day journey that we can take people on. And then from there, you can go to our 21-day journey. And then from there, if you just can't get over us, you can go to our 31-day journey. And that's all virtual. Of course, you can come and visit us in Brooklyn, Bed-Stuy. And then we do have our virtual offerings. And I think a part of this programming that we're putting out is really focused on people who feel like sometimes yoga's not for them, or, oh, I have to do a whole hour class. It's like, no, you don't have to do an hour. You can literally come on the mat for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, and it will invigorate your day, and it will just continue to reinform your practice.
Yeah. And the most important part, and this came from our own, like, just like our own challenges, like in quarantine, you would think it'd be like, oh my gosh, I just have all this time to do yoga. No, we're just like everyone else. Like we didn't want to, there were so many things that were going on, but knowing that when you roll out the mat, knowing that when you pour into yourself in these ways, like the work that you do on the mat is reflective of your whole day and in your entire life. And so you not only reap the benefits, the people around you, your family, your community, your coworkers, they reap the benefits. And so for us, it was really thinking about consistency. And so consistency, like we're saying, it doesn't need to be an hour. I think a whole hour every day seems really intimidating. And it's a turn sometimes. If you're really busy, it's like a whole hour to commit. In my head, it took me 30 minutes just to think about committing for that hour. So I'm giving it an hour and a half of like brain space or free rent in my head that it's occupied. And so for us, it's like the idea that like habits are built in incremental steps and the idea of consistency. So as opposed to like being on fire, doing yoga for a week straight and then falling off for a month, like you really reap the benefits when you do it in smaller portions, but consistently over a period of time. And so for us, the idea is really like making it a part of your practice, like your ritual. And so when you make it more approachable, when it's fun, hit these peaks of challenges, but then these moments of rest, right? And you know that's what's planned out. It makes it that much more obtainable. And so that's what we really wanted to do. We wanted to be obtainable, and especially for beginners. We get a lot of beginners, which is amazing that people are trusting us with their first yoga class. So we geared a lot of the 7-day journey towards the beginners, just to like feel confident, to feel grounded in what's happening. I think sometimes you go to a yoga class and it's like open level and you're like, what are they talking about? I don't even know the name of the postures. Like there's a lot that goes on that could be really intimidating and it just puts up a barrier to entry to make you continue or to have you want to continue. And so we just wanted to be really mindful about, again, like Paris said, people are entering. And how can we meet them there? So if you're a beginner, that's where we're going to kind of like guide you to. Even if if you're been doing it for a while, sometimes we get into autopilot, right? And I think I know it all. And it's good to circle back to your foundations, right? It's good to like get a base understanding of like, how can I mess up from the ground up? There may be things that I've overlooked when I'm being an autopilot. So I know we're going on and on about it, but we're really excited about the journey.
I love it. That's great. Yeah, no, that was an amazing answer. And I think I'm so excited that you do have a virtual platform for it, because I'm always, people are always asking, my clients are always asking me like, I'm looking for something that is like, that has representation, that doesn't make me feel bad about myself, and something that takes away that kind of like all or nothing, like, okay, I have to go to a class, do it for an hour, because that's like so time consuming. And so then you end up having people who just don't do it at all, and they feel bad for not doing anything. And so I love that you mentioned 10 minutes, because I think that is, I think for a lot of people, they'd be like, well, that's not enough, but I start with something that feels so doable and then grow it from there, as you said, and just have that consistency. One last thing I just wanted to ask you, something that I know comes up when I'm working with people, is that sometimes, if your body has changed, I work with a lot of people that have kind of recovered from, an eating disorder or chronic dieting, and their body has gotten larger, or maybe their body's just gotten larger because bodies change. And sometimes they feel like, some of the poses feel really different. Like they're like, oh, now I feel my stomach is there, or like I can't do that the same way. And so they feel a lot of resistance towards even having a practice anymore. I'm wondering if you would have any kind of advice for someone who's experiencing that.
You are not alone. I am here with you. So we are really, I think, generally really big on intention, right? So I think for me, because I have that experience, is how does my intention throughout the practice support shifting, and that just being kind to your body, right? Thinking of like, what does it mean to have gratitude, to be able to feel your stomach, right? I think that is just that breath, that connection of breath and movement to like, how do we find gratitude in our breath and movement? And how do we create space and honor the ways in which our body supports us and even the ways in which our body has shifted? I think even folks who have had injuries, right? I'm one of them, have had different injuries, just to be able to have gratitude, to be able to move in the ways that I'm moving now, and knowing that I might not always be able to move how I'm moving in this present moment in 50 years, So I think it's really important to be present with what is versus what isn't. But when the what isn't comes up, to be able to be centered and grounded in that intention and that breath. And it's a continual journey. Some days you might I know for me, I might get on the mat and be like, oh, I can't jump back and forth how I used to. And I don't do certain poses like I used to. But really having grace and honoring myself for showing up, I think is really, really important. Yeah.
I love that. I love a couple things that really stood out to me there is just having the intention, like the intention of kindness, and really focusing on what is versus what is not. Like I think that's such a wonderful perspective to have. I think a lot of people kind of go into it just comparing their body to maybe what it used to be. Like as you said, even if with an injury, or comparing to like what your body was 20 years ago, and it's like it's not going to be the same.
Yeah, I'm not doing that today.
Yeah, and even if you've just fallen out of your practice, there's times where I've been avoiding it. Maybe I've avoided it for a month. And so your body may have been able to fluidly move in specific ways. And so I think there's an appreciation there's a humbleness too in having to build yourself back up from the ground up. And I think there's relating to your body in that new way and just having a different appreciation. And so knowing where I used to be and then understanding where I am now. And so feeling it out and just being with that whole journey, I think is really beautiful. We're always trying to arrive at this destination, or we're always trying to work on specific poses or what we think that looks like. And it's like the journey is really what's so beautiful about it, and just being really present there for it to experience it all. And like Paris said, being with what is as opposed to what isn't, I think is what really helps me get through it as well.
Our time has kind of come to a close here, and I just want to thank you both so much for being here today. Where can people find more information about BK Yoga? Where can they sign up for the virtual classes, and just anything else that you want to share with the audience today?
Yes, I know, I love it. So you can find us on all the social networks at BK Yoga Club. And we have just expanded into a wellness-inspired coffee shop and yoga studio. So our new location, which is 704 DeKalb in Bed-Stuy in Brooklyn, we have wellness-inspired coffee drinks, wellness-inspired teas, CBD oils, adaptogens, even mushroom blends for just other wellness additives. So we're really excited about that. And again, just expanding the community building that we do. We like to think of the coffee shop as the local watering hub where creativity connections are made, where people really come together and build. And so we get to really expand on that, on and off the mat now. So that's where you can find also our website, bkyogaclub.com. You can sign up for our yoga classes, our yoga journeys. And we also have a lot of videos on YouTube. If you want to pop on the YouTube, it's BK Yoga Club. We're all over Well and Good's channel, and you can do some free yoga with us there as well.
Yeah, amazing. Now, was there, did you want to give a shout out to the organization that you're associated with that does the grants and things like that?
You did shout out to Blavity.
So we are very honored to actually be one of the Blavity Fellowship grantees.
This is the first cohort too, so we're super honored to be in their initial run.
I think again, amplifying voices of Black folks is super important, especially in wellness. And so we're just excited to be a part of Blavity's fellowship, blavity.org. And so we just want to say, hey.
Yeah, we're officially part of the Blavity family. And like Paris is saying, amplifying the voices, and not just in words only, but they're actually putting an action and financial backing behind it. So we're really, really grateful for them for just supporting us in the vision and providing us with opportunities like this.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time today. People are going to love this interview, and it's been an honor meeting you and having this time to connect.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you so much, Summer. It's been awesome, and thank you for, dealing with all of it. noise.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you.
All of these interviews that I've done in the movement series have me so excited for just the evolution that's happening. Like you see, more studios opening, more classes being offered online, like more trainers taking this approach. And it's just really great. Like it's really how the industry gets disrupted, and seeing more people opening studios. It's fantastic. So if you're looking for yoga, definitely check out BK Yoga. They look like they have so many amazing classes. You can find links to their studio as well as their social media and any other links that were mentioned in this episode at summerinnanen.com/210. Thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate you listening. Rock on. I'm Summer Innanen, and I want to thank you for listening today. You can follow me on Instagram and Facebook at Summer Innanen. And if you haven't yet, go to Apple Podcasts, search Eat the Rules, and subscribe, rate, and review this show. I would be so grateful. Until next time, rock on.